Hi, Vianne. Thank you for sending a new set of essays. Let's take a look and see what you have done here today. Let's see. Experts about both the developing and developed world have debated whether the aftermath of processed food or pure practicality has an impact on our lives. This essay will discuss both sides using examples from the UK government and Oxford University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Okay, so the grammar is fine. So that's a good thing. The problem that I'm seeing here is that, well, there's two problems. Number one, we don't know what the essay is about. Okay, the aftermath of processed food. Okay, but then you say pure practicality. That's not a rephrasing of the topic at all. Okay, in fact, the topic is not, is processed food good or is it bad? The topic is something far more specific. Okay, the topic is, well, let's kind of break it down. It says that we're moving away from traditional food and moving more and more towards processed food. And then it says this has a negative effect on families, individuals, and societies. And if I'm not mistaken, it says to what extent do you agree or disagree? So there's no question about whether we're moving towards processed food. This is a given. The question is if this has a negative effect on families, individuals, and society. That's what you have to talk about. Okay? Those three specific layers of our world. And the negative effect this shift either has or does not have. Okay? So here you say that you're going to discuss both sides, but both sides of what? Again, this isn't clear. Again, this isn't related to what the topic has asked you to talk about. Okay? And you haven't also told us your position. Saying that you're going to discuss both sides is not enough to tell us your position. If it says to what extent do you agree or disagree, you have to tell us to what extent you agree or disagree. This is really important for task achievement. Remember, the examiner wants a roadmap. The examiner wants to know where your essay is going, okay, in order to ensure that you've organized your ideas appropriately, okay? So let's move on. All right, so let's move on. There is ample evidence that the food industry underwent major changes over the last couple of years. Since the introduction of junk food, we have been acquainted with severe risks. The central reason behind this is threefold. Firstly, we're working more than ever, oftentimes up to 40 hours per week. Secondly, there is an ever-growing amount of advertisements around us, such as public banners depicting the newest kinds of fast food, and the same development can be seen on social media. Thirdly, it is about profit maximization. However, the food industry clearly wants to expand. For example, recent empirical research by the UK government demonstrated that the food industry became one of the most significant, yet undoubtedly controversial sectors. It must not be forgotten that although plenty of our conventional food is being replaced, the enjoyment of fast food is also simply practical due to its quick preparation. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that there are a number of benefits, but we must be aware of the drawbacks and the lingering problems that are adding up with this trend. All right, so the good news about this is that the grammar and the vocabulary are really nice. Um, the problem is that it you've basically treated this as a positives and negatives of fast food. And again, that's not what the essay is asking you to talk about. Remember, you're supposed to talk about three specific layers of society: families, individuals, and society. I have to really stress that. Okay? And it's this shift. So, for example, I wanted to know here, how is this maybe better than traditional food when it comes to families, individuals, and or society? Okay? So if you wanted to talk about positives, that's what you needed to focus on. This is far more general. Okay? Um So sometimes it's really just a matter of signposting and making it really very straightforward what you're talking about. So we're working more than ever. Therefore, the shift towards fast food is very helpful to working families, specifically parents, who need to have quick meals ready for their children, that have an abundance of nutrients and vitamins. Okay, so And this would not be possible with traditional home cooked meals because these are very time consuming and it can be rather inefficient to source all the needed ingredients. Okay, so this is the way you need to develop it rather than a generic, oh, the positives of fast food, the negatives of fast food. Okay, all right, let's keep going. Although there's a case for the enrichment that junk food provides to us as a society, the adverse impacts are just about to unfold. This is largely because over time we have been able to study and follow the development of that change. For example, an extensive study by the Oxford University, without the here, by Oxford University showed that over 70% of British family households perpetually withdraw from their traditional meals, and in addition, already 40% of youngsters are obese because fast food contains common unhealthy ingredients such as sugar and food additives. Consistent with this line of thinking is that by over substituting traditional food, we are left with harmful downsides. All right, this is good and this is appropriate. Okay, so I feel like you have developed this correctly, although I do feel it's a little maybe underdeveloped. I mean, you spent a lot more time talking about the positives than you did the negatives, okay? So while I thought this paragraph was developed appropriately, you talked about the loss of traditional meals, you talked about obesity, and you even talked about families a little bit. Am I correct? Let me see. British families, yeah, they withdraw. So, okay, great. So they withdraw from traditional meals, which I'm not really crazy about that expression. You don't withdraw from traditional meals. You maybe stop making them, or you 40% of youngsters are no. British has perpetually, yeah, we don't really say this, perpetually withdraw. They cease to create maybe traditional meals. In any case, it was definitely on the right track, but I feel like you should have had a little more. And also, what effect does this have on our society? This is also really important. So, from the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that although modern nutriments add valuable contribution to our daily, no, you don't need this. Although there's no contrast here, it's just one clause, so there's no need for this contrast. I firmly believe that modern nutriments add a valuable contribution to our daily life. I don't really like this modern nutriments. I mean, what are you trying to tell us? Fast food? And you keep talking about junk food, but quite honestly, fast food is something a little different. So it's these quick prepared meals that we typically get from very casual kind of establishments, whereas junk food could be tons of stuff. It can be stuff you can buy at the supermarket, like snacks and chips and crisps and things like that. So it's not entirely the same thing. So you can't use these two terms interchangeably. But I would have just said, I firmly believe that fast food adds a valuable contribution to our daily life. Um, and then this also doesn't work. Consequently, no, it's not consequently. You just said that you think it adds a great contribution. Maybe what you wanted to say, however, the detrimental results are too concerning for families, individuals, and society, not for us, for families, individuals, and society. It's predicted that we will see further changes regarding food trends and behavior. Okay. So you should have a really good idea of what worked well in this essay and what didn't. For me, your task achievement had issues in the first half of the essay. That is, you didn't lay out your position in the introduction. It's something I told you in your previous set of essays that you need to start doing. You have to lay it out. It's very important if you're aiming for band 7. Okay? So answer the question very specifically, very directly in your introduction, number 1. Number 2, you have to focus on the question in your body paragraphs. Now, you did do it to a better extent in the second body paragraph, but in the first body paragraph, it was still unfocused as far as I'm concerned. Okay. And then here, like I said, you didn't mention society at all, whereas you should have. Okay. So that's my feedback on your essay. Let's take a look. Please remember to include the image in your answer. It's very helpful for me. I do refer to them a lot, so that would help. The bar chart shows the sales, not the selling. The bar chart shows the sales of brown and black leather shoes across 9 different European nations for the year 2018. The data is shown in units, thousands, fine. Almost 150,000 black leather shoes were purchased in Hungary, whilst France showed the most basic selling by a bit over 25,000. An almost identical number, get rid of this time, for brown leather shoes was given by Poland. Identical to what? To Hungary or to France? This is confusing. Don't start a sentence with and, okay? So just start. In contrast, comma, the fewest purchases decreased tenfold to roughly 10,000 in Belgium. Now, it's not decrease because this is not this is not a dynamic chart. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that a dynamic chart is one that shows change over time. So, for example, in 1920, this many shoes were sold. In 1930, this many were sold. In 1940, this many were sold. That's a dynamic chart. And when you have a chart like that, which shows change over time, you can use verbs like decreased. Here, however, you have one moment in time. It's a snapshot, it's a photograph of a moment in time. And these are called static charts. So words like decreased, increased, fell, rose, etc., they don't belong here. All right, it's a different set of vocabulary that you need. And instead, you need the vocabulary of comparison, not vocabulary that talks about increases and decreases. Okay? So it could have been something like, in contrast, the fewest purchases appeared in Belgium at roughly 1/10 the figure of France. I don't know, I'm assuming. Both Italy and the UK illustrated a similar balance between the two kinds of shoes. Approximately 65,000 black leather shoes were sold across Germany, Ireland, and Poland. What, each or together? Specify. However, people in Hungary acquired twice as many shoes, amounting to 140,000. All right, now here I'm confused because I don't know, when you're talking about Hungary here, are you talking about black or are you talking about brown? Already mentioned black leather shoes in Hungary, so this is rather confusing. Okay, let's see what you wrote, and then for your overview, and then I'll tell you. Overall, it is clearly visible, no comma here, that brown leather shoes were preferred most among the nations. On the other hand, in French-speaking countries, namely France and Belgium, the number of people buying both kinds of shoes, no comma necessary, was the lowest among all. Okay, so one thing I want to tell you here, Vianne, for sure, is that I don't agree with your organization, okay? You should have had 2 paragraphs. In general, what we recommend is introduction, and personally, and I can tell you this from my experience as an examiner, I say put your overview right after your introduction. Do not leave it to the end. There are a handful of strategic reasons why I suggest this, so just take my advice. Put your overview right after your introduction. And then you should have 2 paragraphs for your details. Okay? It might not seem, number 1, like a big deal, and it might not seem, number 2, like you always need one, but I can definitely recommend that it's a good idea, especially if you're trying to get a high score in coherence and cohesion. Okay? Essays that do show good coherence and cohesion, do show good paragraphing, and do show good organization of ideas will do better in this criterion. Okay? So I want to show you a little bit about what I would have done with this essay. All right, so here's the image. This is why it's really important that you put it in your answer. The first thing I would do is I would divide my detail paragraphs into 2 paragraphs. I would have one for black leather shoes, and I would have another one for brown leather shoes. And then I would make comparisons where necessary. So I would start with black. Why? Because that's the highest figure on the chart. Take a look, it's right here. You can see that Hungary sold the most shoes. And that's the kind of thing you want to signpost. You want to emphasize the highest and the lowest, okay? So my paragraph would sound something like this. Regarding black leather shoes, 3 countries sold between 100 and 150,000 pairs of shoes. Specifically, Hungary sold the most at roughly 140,000, followed closely by Italy at 125,000. Belgium sold just over 100,000. In contrast, the fewest black leather shoes sold were in France at 40,000 or 35,000 black leather shoes. The remaining countries, and then you name them, UK, Germany, Ireland, Holland, and Poland, all sold between 60,000 and 100,000 black leather shoes. And that's it for your first paragraph. You've highlighted the highs, you've highlighted the lows, and then you kind of smushed together, but you named them. And this is really important because these are your key features. These are your categories. And so we have to know what the names of the categories are. Okay, so I smushed those, what was it, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 together. And then I would do pretty much the same thing for brown leather shoes. I would say more countries sold between 100 and 150 brown leather shoes, but the numbers were slightly lower. Specifically, Poland sold the most at 135,000 brown leather shoes, Germany and Hungary at 125, and Italy just over 100,000 brown leather shoes. The lowest number of any shoes sold were brown leather shoes in Belgium at just over 5,000. And then guess what? You don't even need to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4. You could, but you don't need to because I already know what the categories are and I know that they're somewhere in this range. But you could. You could say, for example, France, UK, Ireland, and Holland all sold between 75 and 100,000 brown leather shoes, and then you're done. Okay, so what have you done here? You've mentioned all the categories. You've highlighted the really important parts, which are those highs and those lows. And then you just kind of smush together the ones that really didn't matter so much because you don't need that level of detail. And that's how I recommend doing this. Okay, so go ahead and correct these. Let's see more work from you. Let's see you please apply some of the stuff that we talked about in this correction. Okay, and I'm looking forward to your next set. Good luck.